Hello there, and welcome to the Thinking Fellows podcast. My name is Caleb, and I'm joined by Doctors Adam Francisco and Scott Keith. Merry Christmas! This is this is Christmas Eve. If you're listening to this now, we're not recording this on Christmas Eve, of course, but this episode's coming out on Christmas Eve. Hopefully, you get to spend some time with your family. Maybe at least have one day off from work. I know some people end up having to work Christmas Day, if you work for a hospital maybe or something like that, or emergency services, I don't know, Walmart.
Yeah, I think pastors work on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
Oh, I think they do too. So, but I hope this is a time of rest for people who are listening at home, and that they can maybe sit and relax and enjoy a podcast. That is the catchphrase of the show. But we're going to talk about Christmas. I wanted to talk about the platitudes that sort of are associated with this time of the year, address some of those, ask questions like, is Jesus really the reason for the season? Or what does that mean? Is he, Lord, you are the reason for the season? I heard that one recently and had to stop myself from chuckling. It was actually a really interesting prayer. I'll do the end of it. It was, Lord, bless this season because we all know you're the reason.
Where did you hear this?
Amen. I heard this at a work Christmas party, not the 15-17 Christmas party, but another one in which I was a guest and not an employee. And
right. You were somebody's date.
I was somebody's date.
The prayer was composed by the great theologian that we like to call restaurant owner.
That's exactly, yes, the great evangelical restaurant owner.
Yeah, okay.
That's all right.
Yeah.
So
Man, be generous, Caleb.
Yeah,
Jeez.
that you're chuckling suggests you have some issues with your sanctification, but I mean, that's neither here nor there.
Oh. Well, okay. It's a great start to a Merry Christmas episode. But in reality, we've in the past done, I think last year we just straight up did the theology of the incarnation for Christmas was what we did. The year before that, I'm having a hard time thinking. I think we just did Christmas stories, actually, with Rod, which was kind of fun. So I thought we'd maybe do some of that too. And then the other thing I've seen online lately associated with Christmas is sort of the expectation that this be a happy time of the year for everybody. It's the most wonderful time of the year. And
Pastor Hiller just preached on that last Sunday.
Oh, interesting. So, and I saw a post, because you hear about, that this is a hard time for people who have had loss around this time of year and miss family members and stuff. But I saw another one that probably impacts more people than we think. And this ties into your book a little bit. But somebody was saying that Christmas time is hard for them to think about because their parents have been divorced since they were 12 or something like that. And it's a reminder that they'll never get to have a Christmas with their entire family together ever again in his whole life. And that it's kind of like a hard reality to face. And I think that, obviously your book deals with
that would
fragmented family.
That would be hard. I think about that every time we're actually able to get together, how unique it is.
Indeed. Even just a meal together as a family is kind of a unique thing.
But then to have grown kids and still have them be able to come back, and it's just crazy.
So I don't know exactly the best way to dive into this. Maybe that first one is a good one. I've been hearing, like I said, I heard it in this prayer, been hearing it a lot lately. Jesus is the reason for the season. Amen.
True.
True. But helpful?
Next question?
Yeah. But helpful, question mark? As a sort of a statement. I find that it comes usually as condemnation against consumerism.
Yeah, if I were to have a problem with it, that would be my problem with it, is that it's... So you're not going to go around saying that to another Christian and expect that you're telling them something they don't know. It's not like you're going to walk up to another Christian in church and go, well, Jesus is the reason for the season. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, it is?
Yeah.
It's always going to be, in a context where you think non-Christians need to hear why we celebrate Christmas.
And that's what this prayer I was talking about was, right? These restaurant owners were essentially forcing all these heathens who work for them. Yeah. And I mean heathen when I
including
say that.
your date.
Yeah, well, she's Norwegian. But it was a joke, everybody. It was a joke. But no, seriously, kind of forcing them into this prayer. It was kind of funny because all these people who probably, if they've ever been to a church, certainly don't regularly go to or believe anything. I know some of these people, atheists there, who all sit and pretend to pray and listen to this. Jesus is the reason for the season.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is that as an evangelism tactic, I think it's probably low on the list of go-tos. It's just sort of trying to shame people who probably still have a good time at Christmas, probably still enjoy getting together with family and exchanging gifts and having some time off to go snowboarding or do whatever they do. Just shaming them into thinking about, well, Jesus is the reason we do this. I mean, the fact is, if you're trying to sort of pull something like that off, actually share with them the gospel. Because just saying Jesus is the reason for the season doesn't really tell them anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it tells them nothing about who Jesus is.
It doesn't tell them about the gospel. It doesn't tell them about the incarnation. It doesn't tell them anything, really. It trusts that they maybe saw a little drummer boy cartoon one time when they were little that explained it to them.
It relies on their perception of who Jesus is, which we should admit could be positive or negative in today's society. I mean, it could be horribly negative, right? That phrase alone could just be associated with a scarring church experience. Legalism at home, parents who, perpetuated good Christian morals, but also at the same time treated them horribly their whole life or something like that. And so, again, to get back into this theme, it could also be actually the opposite of an evangelistic tool, and you could just push somebody further away from reception of the gospel.
Yeah. It's an assertion, right? Jesus is the reason for the season, an assertion, and it's a true assertion, but it's just sort of out there, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think it's sort of like a Christian version of virtue signaling, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And when people signal their virtue,
right?
Some people get triggered by it. It's fine. Jesus is the reason for the season, but there's more to be said.
I think you have to,
as with any assertion.
Yeah, you have to take it at least one step back. I mean, you could just simply ask the question, why is Jesus the reason for the season? And even if you know something basic about the incarnation, you can say, why an incarnation at all, right? And I don't know what it was published on, but Joel Hess did something on this. He writes for the 1517 website, and he does the Ringside podcast, and he posted something that was, the reason for the season is you, going back one step, that the purpose of the incarnation is actually for Christ to come, live and die and raise for your sake, to sort of bring things back into that total gospel for you proclamation sense of the thing. It also gets to problems of, like the problem of sin, which helps you actually speak to people who are struggling and hurt during this time too. It's more pointed that you're right. The reason for the season isn't really gathering around. There is something there for people who can't gather around with family, right? There's like a wholeness that is addressed in Christ's incarnation and what that ultimately means in his death and resurrection too. So I've also heard, like, let little baby Jesus live too. Like, don't talk about the crucifixion during
I was like,
Christmas.
what does that mean? I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Let little baby. So at Christmas, let us celebrate the incarnation and not just the eventual crucifixion.
Yeah, I actually talked to Erica because we were, we actually got our first real Christmas tree this year. We've been married for 5 years.
I just want to clarify, by real Christmas tree,
I mean absolutely fake.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But I mean, like,
but big.
But bigger than 3 feet tall. We've had a little one.
So they got a fake tree that's a real size tree, so he's calling it their first real Christmas tree.
Oh.
It's weird.
And you live in the mountains with lots of pine trees around you, right?
But they're not the dense, like, Douglas fir type pine that, like, looks good. It's,
Costco sells trees for a pretty reasonable price.
There's a whole
Like
reason
real
why
trees,
we got
real trees.
There's a whole reason why we got a fake one. It's complicated. But so our first, like, not little fake tree, because we've always in the past 5 years celebrated Christmas Day at other people's houses. My grandma's house, at their cabin. Brought the presents even for the kids over there and stuff like that. So we haven't even been at our house, and so we had to buy a tree topper. And I was like, "Hey, why don't we get a cross? You can get it instead of an angel or a star. Like, maybe we'll get a cross." And Erica looked at me like with a stare. I was like, what, you don't like crosses? She's like, he's being born. Let him. And I'm like,
She's got a point.
yeah, she's got a point. I guess, but what do you think about that? I mean, there's a reason he's being born, right?
I mean, I think you guys, if you listen to the show, know I'm not the churchier guy, but at the same time, I think there's something to the church year that sort of walks you through all seasons of Christ's birth, life, death, and resurrection. That's valuable because every year you're sort of brought back into this celebrating the wholeness that was Christ and his incarnation and his salvation for you, right? So when we say that Christ saved us from our sins, we don't normally just say, well, it was just this or just that. We kind of put in the whole thing. His incarnation, his perfect life in our stead, his sacrificial death for our sin, his resurrection is the first fruits of our resurrection. And this kind of encourages you to celebrate all aspects of that. I mean, at the same time, I kind of wish people would just relax a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's the way I'm feeling right now.
so what if somebody is like thinking of the Easter implications of the incarnation? That's great. They're thinking about something. I mean, most people don't think about anything. So I don't know, man, just relax. Get a tree, real one or fake one, I don't care. Celebrate with your family, get some presents and enjoy it. Go to church and hear the word and receive the sacraments. Celebrate the birth of Christ. And if it makes you think about Easter, groovy.
Well, that's a good answer. I think. I mean, and there, I agree. There's something to church seasons which give us an opportunity to focus on a particular thing that's at hand. I think with Christmas, it probably depends on where you're at. How much of that gets centered on like Christ's gift is, as the example for us to give, is pretty popular around this time of year, or even the analogy of our giving gifts as, comparable to the gift of Christ.
I'd say, let's be real. In most homes, that connection is tangential.
At best.
Christmas is a time of year when we celebrate. We're incredibly blessed in this country, most of us, I'd say, to have more than we need to survive. And so when you're in situations like that, when you come together to celebrate, gift giving in Thanksgiving for having one another and for loving one another is usually part of it. And that's most of why we give Christmas presents. If you're in a household that makes a connection between that and Christ's gift for you, that's great. But again, just relax.
Just be, man.
Just relax a little.
Well, even at another level, like there's something practical and vocational about it too. Like it's one of those opportunities where, like, parents, for instance, can step out of their daily role with kids and be something magical for a day, right? It's one of those places where like these strong memories are formed, these positive memories are formed.
Yeah.
And there's actually something really valuable about that if we can then also connect that to the life of Christ.
There's some
like, for instance, I don't always look forward to going to church. I know that makes me bad, but I like taking my kids to church a lot. I love seeing how much my daughter enjoys the rhythm and the flow of
I like it when
liturgy.
Emerson tells us all to stop singing.
Yeah, that one's great too. And my son,
anytime we start singing hymns, he'll literally he's like, "Stop singing!
Yeah.
Stop singing!"
He doesn't have the joy down in his heart. But
That's my favorite.
But there's something oddly, like, I really look forward to Christmas Eve services. Like, I just do. There is a lot of joy attached to that historically in my life, that I just look forward to Christmas Eve services. They are something very special for me. They are one of the few times that I just absolutely look forward to being in church with my whole family. And I know, and most of the time it is my whole family. And there's just something very special about that. And I think that's, again, on the more practical side of things, Christmas is one of those opportunities to form these positive imaginations towards, the Christian faith.
Well, there's the age-old argument between Tolkien and Lewis was how specific do you be with your allegories, right? Or your analogies. Lewis always wrote Aslan as the prototypical Christ figure, and it was very obvious to pick out. And then you read Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and it's harder to pick out. To me, this is, but at the same time, Tolkien in his On Fairy Story essay is the one who sort of really lays out the idea of eucatastrophe and as a concept in literature, these good catastrophes that happen that come right in time to save the day, where the hero comes in and you don't expect it because you think all hope is lost, and that looks back to your Christian faith because Christ is the ultimate eucatastrophe. So I think there is something to say about a time of magic in the life of a child that is either expressly connected to Christianity or not expressly connected to Christianity that can help them believe that really magical things can happen, or you might even say things that they didn't expect could be as good as they are could happen. And I think that there is a connection that can be made between that and believing in Christianity, because the story of the incarnation is an impossible story to believe. The story of Christ's perfect life in our stead is an impossible story to believe. His crucifixion for us is impossible. His resurrection is really impossible. But all these things really happened and are really true and are really given to us fully. And if a child can, at some point in time when they're hearing the description of how much God loved them so much that he gave the most precious thing he owned that was his for them, is easier to believe if they have some instances where somebody has done something similar or like that for them. So I guess I'd argue that, we give gifts to one another, and it's because we love one another, and we give of ourselves because we love one another. And that can be a connection, and it doesn't have to be, they don't have to be sat down for a lecture on how this is expressly connected to Christ. It can be, but it doesn't have to be for that connection to be meaningful.
Or even to be made later, right? These are there's a value to these categories of these pictures just being formed and even sitting there in that person's mind for the gospel to later take hold of.
Right.
And so I like there might be an issue with expecting immediate results to these types of things. That's why I sort of like the picture of like the catechetical life of the Christian in the Reformation, and less how we sort of practice it now as sort of like a rite of passage or this limited time of education. It was the whole life, and these connections were being made between vocation, the role of the mother and the father in the household, the place of children in the household, the gifts of God in daily life in places where you might not expect it, that explicit gift of God in the cross of Christ that has to be like sort of driven to you, was like a very complete picture,
Yeah.
and not just like I explained it once, it's the right time of the year, you should get it.
Yeah.
Right. It was a lifelong sort of battle, might even be the right word, over these kinds of categories and things.
That's the benefit. You mentioned the church calendar earlier, Scott. The benefit of the church year, and as much as I want to have a martini after work on Wednesday evening, there is benefit to going to those Advent services.
Sure there is.
And if that's just sort of part of your routine, even though routine kind of has a negative connotation or maybe a boring connotation, it just becomes part of your life. And if you've got kids or you have social connections with other people, when they see that, questions arise, wonderful opportunities to speak the gospel to people. My family will be going to our martial arts gym a couple days after Christmas for a Christmas party, and it's filled with Hindus, Muslims, and God knows what else. And
maybe a Christian or two.
A few Christians, and it's a pretty. Everybody there likes each other. We're all close friends. We do all sorts of things for each other, and we have open, candid conversations. And so these last couple of weeks, we haven't been able to go to training on Wednesday evening because it's too tight for church and so on and so forth. And people ask, well, where are the kids? haven't the kids been coming to jujitsu? Oh, well, we got Advent services. I'm like, oh, what's that? And it's just these little sort of mundane kind of conversations, but they work their way towards a larger conversation. So it's not just how it might. I mean, I think family is the most important thing in terms of Christmas, and how that's the immediate contact with the gospel or connection with the gospel you can make to your family. But it's bigger than that. Even the Christmas wars, Jesus is the reason for the season, or happy holidays, in that larger cultural conversation. Long gone are the days of Christendom when everybody knows all this sort of thing.
That's right.
And if you're not virtue signaling or just asserting something out there just to get people upset,
Right.
if you are in those circumstances, there are tremendous ways, if you're doing it in a positive, a disarming way, to speak the gospel to people, even in the midst of a culture that really has no room for an incarnation.
Well, there's something interesting about it too. Is like something like Happy Holidays. When somebody says that, it's usually they're thinking about it, right? A lot of times, it's like in some circumstances a corporate policy where you actually have to like stop, think, and make sure you don't say Merry Christmas, right? Most people say it as a conscious decision, whether it's because they have to for legal reasons, their employer, or because they're trying to avoid Merry Christmas. But still, that category is still there, and it comes up immediately the second Black Friday comes around and all the decorations pour out, right? People actually, whether they know it or not, have to start making decisions about even the way they speak during this time of year because of Christmas.
Yeah, I've been in conversations in the past where people gripe and complain about the overuse of Happy Holidays, or Happy Holidays replacing Merry Christmas, and then you get some who say, well, I'm gonna still say Merry Christmas, and I mean, I'm kind of on that side of things, but I mean, how about you just say, hey, Merry Christmas, in a positive, happy way, and however people receive it, fine, whatever.
I'm with you on that one. I've never run into anybody in real life who, when you say Merry
IRL.
Christmas, goes,
You mean
wait a
Happy
minute,
Holidays.
you mean Happy Holidays? Well, you're not going to see.
I have run into the other, and it's
have.
very abrupt too, right? Like I have seen somebody, I won't give their age demographic, in a store be told Happy Holidays and look at the attendant and say, you mean Merry Christmas, right? Like, and, there's something that person is probably not thinking of Christmas as a very positive thing. As
You probably need a martini.
correct them. Yeah.
Just chill out, like Scott
Right now,
said.
too,
Just
right?
relax.
While that might be well-meaning, that isn't actually probably doing the evangelism you hope it's doing.
No, and that's the point, is that none of this stuff where you sort of are doing it against something is.
Yeah.
If you're sort of reacting to something that's just really ticking you off, and you're going to react to that by saying, invoking Jesus' name, Jesus is the reason for the season, or invoking, the name of his celebration, Christmas, Christ Mass, the celebration of Christ, for the same thing. I'm pretty sure that's not his intent here when he says, go and teach people about me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Jesus. Well, I'm not going to stop capitalizing on the sales that happen this time of year because Jesus is the reason for the season. I mean, right? Like, at some point, we are also citizens of the world, and you got to kind of play the game a little bit. Right? So, TVs are on sale right now. If you need a new TV.
Oh my goodness! Go to the other part of this episode.
Jesus is the reason. But
this time of year is hard for some people.
This time of year is hard for some people.
Yeah.
And it stood out to me when I saw that online. That divorce example, for instance, really kind of hit because I was able to imagine from the opposite side of that, as somebody who gets to spend every Christmas sort of with my complete family, how devastating.
And then you get frustrated at your complete family because they're all around you so much during this time of year.
Yeah.
Boys and messes.
Yeah. Thanksgiving was harder this year than I thought it would be, in all honesty, because, we had everybody up in Big Bear, and you forget, you're not used to living with everybody now in the same location, like every day, like when you were growing up. It's definitely different. You have to get used to people's habits again. And this time, like, it's my house, right? So all of a sudden, what I had designated as my space.
Did you hear him point that out? It's my house, right?
That's what it felt like, right? Like it's different when you're a kid and you're mutually destroying your parents' house on Thanksgiving. When then I'm like sitting there getting, admittedly annoyed at my brother for the state things were being left and certain things that only like the self-justification of this only happened because it was my, like you said, and I'm so readily pointed out, it was my place, gosh darn it. So even trying in that way, what do I
This
do?
episode is like a psychology appointment for Caleb, or a psychologist appointment for Caleb.
You should lay down on this bench here.
Oh no, I'm good. I'll stay on this side.
No, but my good friend Aaron, his father died this time last year, and so I was just over at his house the other day doing some work on your sister's van, and he was not feeling so good, and I kind of was giving him a lot of crap about it, and he finally just said, well, and I didn't remember. He said, well, this is hard because the anniversary of my dad's death is coming up. And I thought, yeah. And then I was at church yesterday, and Pastor Hiller was preaching on this exact same thing. Because his sort of theme as he goes through the assigned text for the last couple of weeks has been hope. And, for a lot of people, whether it's because of divorce or because of depression or some sort of problem that they're dealing with psychologically or emotionally, this is really hard. This time of year is really hard. And it's harder than other times of year. And some people would say because there's so many expectations put on this time of year, that you're supposed to be happy. You're supposed to be joyous. You're supposed to enjoy your family. You're supposed to have a family to enjoy. All these sort of, the food's supposed to be great and you're supposed to cook it. And it's like all of this stuff. I always wonder that about a lot of people that, just don't cook all the time, and all of a sudden they have this day a week when they're supposed to stay home, and the food bar is like put up really high. That's gonna be really stressful for some people. And I don't know. I totally sympathize with that. And one of the things that Pastor Hiller pointed out is that, even if you don't feel hopeful at this time of year, Christ is still your hope. Like even if you don't feel it, even if it's not sort of, and emotionally it's difficult for you, He is still your hope. He is still who you rely on for your salvation. And it was just, I thought it was a really good way of approaching it. That just saying, you don't have to. If the reason for the season really is Jesus, right? Incarnation, life, death, and resurrection. You don't have to feel that necessarily
For it to be true.
Or for it to be meaningful and impactful to you, because it is. If his salvation is for you, it's for you. If Christ saves, nothing else and no one else does. And that is true. You will go through periods of where you feel it and you don't feel it, and when you feel hopeful and joyous when you don't. But that truth doesn't change.
Yeah, I mean, it gets down to sort of those, like we said, there were those wanting questions left by Jesus is the reason for the season. And one of those answers is that this is about a faith that comes to you externally, apart from the place you are at now. And in fact, in the face of the place you are at now, as a poor, miserable sinner, whether that comes in the form of, loss and pain during this time of year, or even sort of your failings during this time of year, your impatience, whatever it may be. This incarnation is outside of you. What you do doesn't actually stop it or cause it from happening, and its purpose is to come overwhelm you with that, to come take away those burdens, to steal them from you.
So Merry Christmas.
10 minutes short?
Oh, I don't know.
That would have been a great close.
Seems like we're at the end of it. Personally.
Well, I was going to just ask you guys some questions, too, and things like that. That might be fun.
Well, so mark down the time so you can
I will.
Take out my Merry Christmas.
Yeah, No, you can keep it. Merry Christmas. But, so this might be fun. What's the most memorable Christmas present you can remember getting?
For me, it was
and
my
why?
Red Line bicycle, and I wrote a blog about it some years ago.
I remember that story.
I used to go ditch school with my friend Justin to the bike shop that was around the corner, and we'd on hot lunch days when our moms would give us lunch, we'd leave school. That's probably bad. And we'd walk up to the bike shop, and I'd stare at this red line bicycle, and then we'd go to Wiener Schnitzel and get chili cheese dogs, and then sneak back on to school. And I told my mom at one point that I really wanted this bike for Christmas, and I happened to say, well, this is the bike I want, and it's over at this bike shop. And she was like, how do you know it's at that bike shop? And I was like, what do you mean, how do I know? She goes, well, I've never taken you to that bike shop, and you're 12 years old, so how do you know about it? That's a really good question. So, I ended up having to tell her, well, Justin and I, we did school on Fridays, and she wasn't too surprised. But I, at the same time, didn't feel like I was going to get that bike for Christmas after having told her that I did school multiple times to go look at it and eat chili cheese dogs. And that Christmas, my mom always knocked it out of the park for Christmas. In a lot of ways, she still does today. And I was excited for Christmas morning, but I wasn't as excited as I would have been if I hadn't spilled the beans about the red line bicycle at Gil's bike shop. And kind of wandered out to the living room, and there under the tree was this big sort of massive wrapping paper. And I knew right what it was. And went and tore into it. And the point I made in the blog is that as far as evangelism goes, I didn't actually have to be told much about how to evangelize the good news of my red line bicycle. I just hopped on it and started writing. That's how great the gift was. Everybody needed to know about it. Justin, of course, because he knew I'd blown it. My other friends, my grandma who lived a couple blocks away, everybody had to know about it. So I just wrote it over there and showed everybody right on Christmas morning. So meaningful for me. I wrote that blog after I found out that my friend Justin, who had lived a very hard life, he died. He died the day I wrote that blog, and so it was hard.
Yeah,
but still just a great memory too.
Adam,
I like giving gifts, not because I'm beneficent or anything like that, but so I don't really, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the stuff I get. I get it, and I'm thankful for it, and I really like getting Amazon gift cards so I can get the stuff I need for my whatever I've got, whether it's a Jeep or a boat or whatever my midlife crisis is doing to me at that moment. But I do remember as a kid getting I really liked, I don't know why, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, but I really liked the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I grew up in a very Polish Catholic neighborhood, and we'd play football in the park without any pads and against these big Italian and Polish guys. And and I remember one Christmas I got a Pittsburgh Steelers helmet, and I got shoulder pads. My brother got a Dallas, he liked the Dallas Cowboys, and that was awesome stuff. We were walking around the neighborhood with our helmets on, and we never got clocked in the head anymore the way we did. Because if somebody had a helmet, they wore it even if their opponents didn't have helmets. So anyway, that was back in the old days.
You had to get an upper hand on.
Yeah, I remember also one year getting a bow and arrow set. My brother Josh and I oftentimes got the same kind of stuff, and this again back in St. Louis, we had a wooded area behind our house, and we were out there every single day trying to shoot rabbits and squirrels and other creatures. But otherwise, I don't remember a whole lot. I don't remember much.
Yeah, I've noticed. What about you, Caleb?
What's my...
what year did I knock it out of the park?
Actually, so, this is just probably now a Keith family tradition that I'm finding very difficult to uphold. But like your mom, my grandma before you guys were really good at Christmas. Christmas was always sort of like fully loaded. That tree was never looked empty when you woke up in the morning. In fact, most Christmases I remember waking up, and we lived in a small house with a narrow hallway to the back bedrooms, right? And they would slide the kitchen chairs in front of the living room and then stack up things on the chairs so we couldn't see over into the living room as they were still wrapping presents the morning of. And not because they had neglected to wrap things that they had already had, because there had been presents under the tree for weeks. But because
so much.
Well, because my mom or they had bought stuff the day before, more stuff or whatever, right? And that was always sort of special because growing up, we were never like really wealthy, right? I know that this might. I hope this doesn't hurt, but you noticed when you went over to other people's houses how much smaller our house was than places that people like my friends lived, for instance. All right, and so Christmas, the fact that Christmas was always so big was special. But I don't even. I think I was. If I trace back now, I was 6 when this Christmas was the Christmas I got my first snowboard, which I remember it because, like the bike, it was really obvious sitting behind the tree. And this was one of the ones they had waited to wrap and put out the morning of. And so you get out there and, we had already been up for like an hour, probably playing video games in our back bedroom, just trying to kill the time while they wrap these presents at 5 a.m. and run back. And there it is. I can see it sitting there behind the tree, snowboard as clear as day. Get that. Awesome. Really stoked on it. Next box, bindings. Awesome. Now I get to put the thing together. Next box, boots, like the whole package, which if people, if you ski or snowboard, you understand that the gear for this is an investment, right? Like I have lots of snowboard gear in my house. It's an expense. It's not cheap, which is why most people, when they're starting off, rent gear, because you can rent something for the whole season for, if you rent early, like $100 for the season, $125 for the season. Really cheap gear that's very used, old. And I got to start off on brand new gear that was my own. And the other part of that is that, and I look back on it now because I see how much, because I still snowboard a lot. I snowboard a lot. But it's a commitment to even get to the mountain. And I live 10 minutes away from the resort, which is why I get to do it so often. And we didn't live that close. We had to drive up the mountain every day if my dad took me. So part of the snowboard is not only the financial commitment of buying all that gear in the first place, plus the season pass to the ski resort, plus all the time that then is invested in driving my 7-year-old butt up and down the mountain to go, at least the first couple of days, spend a lot of time, falling in the snow. And then from there, just continuing to do that. And that was just, it was a big gift. It's more than just a snowboard. It's been something like I said, I'm lucky I get to snowboard probably like 3 days a week now because of how close I live and the hours that they're open. And I can show up really early before work in the morning and ride for, 45 minutes and then go home. It's like going to the gym in the morning for me and things like that. And so, but it was a big commitment for my parents my dad who worked a lot, who didn't have a lot of time it was a lifelong gear commitment because kids outgrow gear. Kids outgrow gear fast.
His brother and sister skied too, so there wasn't even a pass down.
So
that was different.
Every couple of years they ended up, there was a new snowboard under the tree. There were new boots. There were new bindings. I remember one season that my parents buying me new bindings halfway through the season because I had progressed to a certain level where these sort of entry level, like really plasticky 3-piece bindings I had didn't keep up with me. And so, yeah, it was like a long-term commitment. And in the moment, you don't realize that, right? It's just sort of a snowboard under the tree. But it was it was a really long-term gift that's still paying dividends as I'm now teaching my kids how to do it. So it's the ski industry's trap. It's a perpetual money machine. But no, really.
We belonged to a really good church, too. That was the other thing that was close to our house. That's been harder for us in California to find that sort of really church that feels like home, that's close to home. So that was always great growing up. It was really just like what you have, Adam, with Faith Capo, so close to San Juan.
Mm.
Yeah. It makes having church just be part of your life and the life of your family, and the life of your children, just normal. And it was just great. Yeah,
we went to school at the church at the church. It was LCMS church school combo and things, and that made things like Advent services really easy, right? Because we did I played sports, so after that you just wait around for like the extra 40 minutes before chapel was, or you'd walk across the street and go help clean up the church before the soup suppers or whatever, just to pass time, and then people would meet you there. And stuff.
Soup suppers. Those would be so much better if there's wine or something.
I saw somebody
Might
that
make the service go a little weird.
I actually
but-
saw somebody post a picture of like this guy and the rest of the guys at their Advent soup supper like drinking beers.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's pretty awesome. Actually,
Yeah.
that's pretty. That's a great way to
Seems
do
like
that.
that's how it should be.
Yeah.
You'd need a virtuous congregation to do that, though. People who could govern themselves and not drink too much.
And
'cause
people
they'd be
that a
falling
lot of these
asleep and-
congregations sort of have bylaws on the books that are from
yeah.
post prohibition days, and
Mm-hmm.
so no one even knows why they're there. They are there though, and sort of the church councils live up to them, whatnot.
Yeah. Thank God for flasks, though. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
On that note, can we say Merry Christmas now?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for listening to this show. Again, I hope you've had a good opportunity to spend time with family. Hopefully, you're not bunkered down in a back room somewhere listening to Thinking Fellows. And if you are,
If you are, send us an email.
send us an email. Merry Christmas. Maybe sneak out to the living room, grab a beer, and then go back. But yeah, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All right, we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.